are making money on calling attention to this, but I guess calling attention to it is better than not calling attention to it. But again, how this the question is how this leads to violence, right? Dehumanization generally tends to lead to violence. 30% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or sexual violence by a non-partner, including sexual harassment at some point in their lives. 137 women across the world are killed by a member of their own family every day. Adult women account for 51% of all human trafficking victims detected globally. 5 million adolescent girls worldwide have experienced forced sex at some point in their life. 23%, and sorry, it should say out of these, it should say 15 million adolescent girls experience forced sex, and then 9 million out of these 9 million adolescent girls are victimized within the last year. 23% of female undergraduate university students reported having experienced sexual assault or sexual misconduct in a survey across 27 universities in the United States in 2015. And this is something that we generally don't want to think about happening on BYU Idaho campus, but it is still a problem here. So something that we need to think about and be aware of. Thinking about contemporary issues, right? The women's movement, how these elements continue on. College enrollment have increased 167% for women since the 1960s, and today 57% of the students in college are women. So there have been some progress, and you don't want to overlook that. But there are still some lingering problems. 7 million women have eating disorders. Only 22 women are CEOs in Fortune 500 companies, which is only 4.3%, which they're comprising 50% of the population or 51% of the population, and they're only having 4.3% of Fortune 500 companies. And the question of this is it because of the residual mindset of traditional femininity that they're weaker, they're more emotional, therefore they're not going to be fit for leading a company? That's a problem that we need to address and think about. On average, women make 20% less than men for the same job, right? This is a statistic that's often cited in the media, and generally what the counterpoint to that is that, well, women are in jobs that are less paid than men, so that's where that number comes from. And the truth of it is that actually isn't where the number comes from. The number comes from equating the same job for the same job. So a teacher for a teacher, a nurse for a nurse, right? Women are making 80 cents on the dollar for every dollar that a man makes. And so the question that we then have to think about is, how is that justifiable, right? How are we continuing to justify that as a recurring problem? Another issue that women face today is that they're tracked into pink collar jobs rather than white collar jobs, right? You've heard of blue collar jobs, right? Factories and things of that nature. White collar jobs would be banks and lawyers and CEOs. Pink collar jobs would be like nurses and teachers and librarians, right? Things that are traditionally for women, and not that those careers are necessarily bad. There's all great things to do. But the issue that people are exposing or questioning is that those are generally paid less than other male jobs, for like engineering and things of that nature. And so, if they're tracked into these pink collar jobs, then that means that they're going to be necessarily making less than men. And so, that is another issue to think about that corresponds right to that making 20% less than men. In academia, higher education has its own lingering problems. Only 30%, 38% of women in the academic world are tenured. Only 7% are non-white, are tenured, and only 27% of college presidents are women. So again, there are some problems that we need to think about. Is this really equality, right? We want to promote that idea that women have equal opportunities, but the question is that whether or not there's a glass ceiling, right? The idea of a glass ceiling is you can see through it, right? So it gives you the feeling of advancement, but the ceiling, right, it suggests that there is a limitation, there's a cap on that. And women in academia earn on average less than men. So again, that's something that's systemic throughout. In the art world, 45.8% of visual artists are women, and they make 47 cents on the dollar for every male artist. And of 18 prominent U.S. museums, of 10,000 artists, 87% are male, and 85% are white. And so again, there's some lingering problems the problems of representation, right? If we're going to an art museum, we're only seeing a male perspective or a white male perspective, then we're only seeing a very small lens. And so the question here is, can we see a larger, spectrum of the human experience and within that? I wanted to end our discussion today with a TED Talk by Colin Stokes, and he talks about how we socialize boys and girls differently, focusing on manhood.
My favorite part of being a dad is the movies I get to watch. I love sharing my favorite movies with my kids, and when my daughter was 4, we got to watch The Wizard of Oz together. Totally dominated her imagination for months. Her favorite character was Glinda, of course. Gave her a great excuse to wear a sparkly dress and carry a wand. But you watch a movie enough times, and you start to realize how unusual it is. Now, we live today and are raising our children in a kind of children's fantasy, spectacular industrial complex. But The Wizard of Oz stood alone. It did not start that trend. 40 years later was when the trend really caught on, with, interestingly, another movie that featured a metal guy and a furry guy rescuing a girl by dressing up as the enemy's guards. Do you know what I'm talking about? Now, there's a big difference between these two movies, a couple of really big differences between The Wizard of Oz and all the movies we watch today. One is there's very little violence in The Wizard of Oz. The monkeys are rather aggressive, as are the apple trees. But I think if The Wizard of Oz were made today, the wizard would say, Dorothy, you are the savior of Oz that the prophecy foretold. Use your magic slippers to defeat the computer-generated armies of the Wicked Witch. But that's not how it happens. Another thing that's really unique about The Wizard of Oz, to me, is that all of the most heroic and wise and even villainous characters are female. Now, I started to notice this when I actually showed Star Wars to my daughter, which was years later, and the situation was different. At that point, I also had a son. He was only 3 at the time. He was not invited to the screening. He is too young for that. But he was the second child, and the level of supervision had plummeted. So he wandered in, and it imprinted on him like mommy duck does to its duckling. And I don't think he understands what's going on, but he is sure soaking in it. And I wonder what he's soaking in. Is he picking up on the themes of courage and perseverance and loyalty? Is he picking up on the fact that Luke joins an army to overthrow the government? Is he picking up on the fact that there are only boys in the universe except for Aunt Beru? And of course, this princess who's really cool, but who kind of waits around through most of the movie so that she can award the hero with a medal and a wink to thank him for saving the universe, which he does by the magic that he was born with. Compare this to 1939 with The Wizard of Oz. How does Dorothy win her movie? By making friends with everybody and being a leader. Like, that's kind of the world I'd rather raise my kids in. Oz, right? And not the world of dudes fighting, which is where we kind of have to be. Why is there so much force, capital F force, in the movies we have for our kids and so little Yellow Brick Road? I mean, there is a lot of great writing about the impact that the boy violent movie has on girls, and you should do that reading. It's very good. I haven't read as much on how boys are picking up on this vibe. I know from my own experience that Princess Leia did not provide the adequate context that I could have used in navigating the adult world that is co-ed. I think, there was a kind of first kiss moment when I really expected the credits to start rolling, because that's the end of the movie, right? I finished my quest, I got the girl, why are you still standing there? Uh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The movies are very, very focused on defeating the villain and getting your reward, and there's not a lot of room for other relationships and other journeys. It's almost as though if you're a boy, you are a dopey animal, and if you were a girl, you should bring your warrior costume. I mean, there are plenty of exceptions, and I will defend the Disney princesses in front of any of you. But they do send a message to boys that the boys are not really the target audience. I mean, they are doing a phenomenal job of teaching girls how to defend against the patriarchy, but they are not necessarily showing boys how they're supposed to defend against the patriarchy. There's no models for them. And we also have some terrific women who are writing new stories for our kids. And as three-dimensional and delightful as Hermione and Katniss are, these are still war movies. And, of course, the most successful studio of all time continues to crank out classic after classic, every single one of them about the journey of a boy or a man or two men who are friends or a man and his son or two men who are raising a little girl. Until, as many of you are thinking, this year when they finally came out with Brave. I recommend it to all of you. It's on demand now. Do you remember what the critics said when Brave came out? Oh, I can't believe Pixar made a princess movie. It's very good. Don't let that stop you. Now, almost none of these movies pass the Bechdel test. I don't know if you've heard of this. It has not yet caught on and caught fire, but maybe today we will start a movement. Alison Bechdel is a comic book artist, and back in the mid-'80s, she recorded this conversation she'd had with a friend about assessing the movies that they saw. And it's very simple. There's just three questions you should ask. Is there more than one character in the movie that is female who has lines? So try to meet that bar. And do these women talk to each other at any point in the movie? And is there conversation about something other than the guy that they both like? All right? Thank you. Two women who exist and talk to each other about stuff. It does happen. I've seen it, and yet I very rarely see it in the movies that we know and love. In fact, this week I went to see a very high-quality movie, Argo, right? Oscar buzz, doing great at the box office, a consensus idea of what a quality Hollywood film is. Pretty much flunks the Bechdel test. And I don't think it should, because a lot of the movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of the movie takes place in this embassy where men and women are hiding out during the hostage crisis. We got quite a few scenes of the men having deep, angst-ridden conversations in this hideout. And the great moment for one of the actresses is to peek through the door and say, "Are you coming to bed, honey?" Like, that's Hollywood for you. So let's look at the numbers. 2011, the 100 most popular movies, how many of them do you think actually have female protagonists? 11. It's not bad. It's not as many percent as the number of women we've just elected to Congress, so that's good. But there is a number that is greater than this that's going to bring this room down. Last year, the New York Times published a study that the government had done. Here's what it said. 1 out of 5 women in America say that they have been sexually assaulted sometime in their life. Now, I don't think that's the fault of popular entertainment. I don't think kids' movies have anything to do with that. I don't even think that, music videos or pornography are really directly related to that. But something is going wrong. And when I hear that statistic, one of the things I think of is that's a lot of sexual assailants. Who are these guys? What are they learning? What are they failing to learn? Are they absorbing the story that a male hero's job is to defeat the villain with violence and then collect the reward, which is a woman who has no friends and doesn't speak? Are we soaking up that story? You know, as a parent with the privilege of raising a daughter, like all of you who are doing the same thing, we find this world and this statistic very alarming, and we want to prepare them. We have tools at our disposal like girl power, and we hope that that will help. But I gotta wonder, is girl power going to protect them if at the same time, actively or passively, we are training our sons to maintain their boy power? I mean, I think the Netflix queue is one way that we can do something very important. And I'm talking mainly to the dads here. I think we have got to show our sons a new definition of manhood. Now, the definition of manhood is already turning upside down. I mean, you've read about how the new economy is changing the roles of caregiver and wage earner. They're throwing it up in the air. So our sons are going to have to find some way of adapting to this, some new relationship with each other. And I think we really have to show them and model for them how a real man is someone who trusts his sisters and respects them and wants to be on their team and stands up against the real bad guys who are the men who want to abuse the women. And I think our job in the Netflix queue is to look out for those movies that pass the Bechdel test, if we can find them, and to seek out the heroines who are there, who show real courage, who bring people together, and to nudge our sons to identify with those heroines and to say, I want to be on their team, because they're going to be on their team. When I asked my daughter who her favorite character was in Star Wars, you know what she said? Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Glinda. Now, what do these two have in common? Maybe it's not just the sparkly dress. I think these people are experts. I think these are the two people in the movie who know more than anybody else, and they love sharing their knowledge with other people to help them reach their potential. Now, they're leaders. I like that kind of quest for my daughter, and I like that kind of quest for my son. I want more quests like that. I want fewer quests where my son is told, go out and fight it alone, and more quests where he sees that it's his job to join a team. Maybe a team led by women, to help other people become better and be better people, like the Wizard of Oz. Thank you.
As we think about the ideas in the TED Talk, I want you to just pause the video for a moment and think of a film that actually would pass the Bechdel test. So just pause. Think of a movie that would have more than one female character. The female characters talk to each other, and they're talking about something other than a love interest. Right? So it's a pretty low bar, but think about whether a film meets that low standard. What we mainly see as far as Hollywood is concerned, and this is another problem that I'm taking a look at one specific aspect like Hollywood, and then this is a microcosm of something larger within society, right? So we did this when we were talking about academia and the art world as far as the canon is concerned. Now that's a microcosm of the larger social phenomenon within the gender problems that we see today. Hollywood is another example of this. But what we see is the epidemic of invisibility. Only 1/3 of lines spoken in films are women, and this has remained unchanged since 1945. Of the top 100 films in 2015, only 32 women had a lead or a co-lead. 3 had a lead from an underrepresented minority, and only 1 featured a female lead 45 years or older. Between 2007 and 2018, 2.5% of directors were women. 4 women have held these 5 jobs. Only 1 was a woman of color, who worked twice. So again, what we're thinking about within this idea of the epidemic of invisibility is what are we missing, right? When we're not allowing half of the population to have a voice to create films and to show part of their world, part of their lives, we're missing half of the human experience. It's like walking around with one eye closed. And the idea is that we want to see the the full spectrum of the human experience, and so we need to push against this. And anytime that there's a film out there that's directed by a woman or deals with women's issues, generally what I hear is criticism of that. Oh, great, this film is too political, right? That was one of the criticisms of Wonder Woman. It was too feminist, or people didn't like the new rendition of Ghostbusters with all female leads because they felt it was too political, right? And we need to think about, moving past those knee-jerk reactions and think about what other issues, why is this important to have, women within media, women within the art world, women within academia. Why do we need these voices, and how is this going to enrich the full human experience? In 2018 specifically, 40 films featured female or lead or co-lead. That's up 8% from 2017 and up 20% from 2007. So maybe we are making progress, but this generally tends the curve tends to lean back towards the loss of representation of women. 11 films featured a female lead, 45 or older, and so 2018 was kind of a stellar year, a landmark year of advancements. But again, that's not a lot, right? 11 films, it's not really a lot of films. Of underrepresented female leads or co-leads, 5 were black or African American, 3 were mixed race, 2 were Hispanic or Latina, and 1 was Asian or Asian American. And so again, what we wanted to do is we want to get more of a full spectrum of the human experience, to understand more of the complexities and the nuances, to have more voices, so we can understand a kind of a richer tapestry of what's going on within the world today. All right, so this completes our portion of the introduction to gender. What we're going to take a look at next is female artists, and what are female artists saying about their art. And I do acknowledge that taking a look at female specific artists is actually doing the antithesis of what Simone de Beauvoir argues about, labeling them other or female artists. But what I want us to think about as we move into that lecture is whether they're representing something specific only to women, or if they're representing something that's common to all of humanity, right? So that's how it's going to fit in within this discussion. All right.